The reality is you need to figure out what works for you. What do you enjoy? What
Yeah.
brings you joy? What gives you energy? And if what gives you energy is going and spending all day trucking around the pyramids in outside Cancun and being miserable in that way. Sorry, I infused my own bias into that. Going and doing that all day, by all means, do that. I'm going to go ahead and sit at the little pool and probably, drink a few too many Coronas and eat some fish tacos, and I'll be just fine.
Welcome to the Let Me Save You 25 Years podcast, where we break down a new Shawnism each week to help you maybe learn from all of my mistakes and build your best life faster, smarter, and with fewer detours than I actually took. I am your host, Shawn D. Nelson, founder of Lovesack, and this is where the big ideas meet real world action. So let me ask you this. How do you value time? How do you value time? Do you have a strategy that helps you utilize the time you're allotted to its full potential? Do you have any kind of daily program to help you do this? Well, today we are covering the Shawnism, It's About Time. And I have a guest who is an expert on the topic. In fact, he's practically written the book on this subject, Mr. Sahil Bloom. We will go into the different types of wealth and why finance is, ironically, the last one on the list, how to quantify the value of time, why doing something that you suck at is actually a very healthy thing to incorporate into your life, how to properly allocate time when you feel there just isn't enough, and why many people wouldn't actually swap their life even with billionaire Warren Buffett. So check this out. I know you're going to love it. From managing millions in venture capital to building a digital empire of at least 1.5 million followers, Sahil Bloom has mastered the art of turning time into opportunity. He's an investor, entrepreneur, and storyteller who's redefining the way we think about productivity, purpose, and living life on your terms. Welcome to the podcast, Sahil Bloom.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
Absolutely. Power user of Lovesack, just found out. That's amazing.
Power user and a very big fan. So I'm excited to get to chat about that offline as well.
Yeah, I had no idea. That's amazing. So, all right. Well, I've pre-ordered your book. I'm the 5 types of wealth, and I'm really excited. I mean, I've taken in tons of your content and really love how you execute across all platforms. And I think our listeners are going to love what you have to say. And when you first heard, without any prep, when you first heard the topic, very straightforward, it's about time. First thing that came to mind without thinking too hard.
Time is your most precious asset. It is, in the end, the absolute only thing that you really have that you cannot get back. And, we live in this world where too few people are actually appreciating the incalculable value of their time until it's too late.
Mm-hmm.
I think about my own life as a young person, and time is one of those things that you think about absolutely none until the very end when it's the only thing that you think about, but then it's too late to do anything about it. And we need to snap back into the present. We need to start appreciating time as our most precious asset so that we can start treating it differently and start actually taking advantage of it in those moments.
I love it. I mean, we're done. We're done here. Now, there are so many things I want to dig in on, but that's a perfect overview. Ultimately, when you pull, as you know, you've done a lot of research on this, and I'm sure you actually probably get into this in the book based on what you've shared. You pull the wealthiest people on the planet and they can own homes everywhere. They can own private jets. They can have every degree. They can have all kinds of those realms of success under their belt. But the one thing they cannot get any more of is time. And it's the ultimate asset. So for me, this is kind of a little bit of a double meaning. Over the years, obviously, I've come to reflect on this quite a bit, as everyone should. And I came across, so I'm a big movie fan as well. And I came across this one movie, and it's the only movie that I actually kind of keep on my laptop. And it's called It's About Time.
Mm.
And I don't know if you've seen this movie. Rachel McAdams. It's a kind of a silly premise, but it has a very impactful message. So and I keep it on my laptop because, occasionally, at least maybe a couple times a year, I make a point of kind of watching this thing because it reminds me to really savor time. And in fact, it's part of my morning mantra. Like I watched a little bit of your content, Sahil, about, how you wake up and how you try to get in the right headspace and some of the tactics. For anyone listening, he Sahil provides great content in this realm. And I have personally this little morning mantra that I try to read out loud to myself every day, or say out loud. I know that sounds really silly. It's something I picked up along the way. And I've kind of added to it over the years, like brick by brick, little like epithet by epithet, things that I think are important to think about and remember and say about myself. And one of the things is it's about time. And what I mean by that is sometimes I get, as someone who is a bit of a perfectionist and way too cerebral about a lot of things. Yeah, it doesn't matter what I do with my kids, what I do with my wife, so much as just spend time. Just start there. Do anything. I love what you said as we were chatting. Have a sleepover with your son, play Hot Wheels. It doesn't matter. It doesn't need to be grand. You don't have to have amazing ski vacations. You don't have to do Disneyland for 3 days with a, fast pass. Like it's about time.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. I think it is. It's one of those things that's very difficult to get across to people beyond like a nod and an uh-huh. You kind of say this to a young person, and they're like, "Oh yeah, 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 time's really important." And I've been trying to figure out, and over the last few years, in the research process for this book and in sharing it, like how to get this across. And one of the questions I love asking people, young people especially, is, "Would you trade lives with Warren Buffett?" He is worth $130 billion. He has access to anyone in the world. He reads and learns for a living. He flies around on private jets, stays in these mansions all over the place. But you wouldn't trade lives with him simply because he's 95 years old. There's no way you would agree to trade the amount of time you have left for $130 billion. So, in that, you have acknowledged that your time has literally incalculable value. And yet, on a
Yeah.
daily basis, how often are you sitting around scrolling on this thing, wasting time and energy comparing yourself to other people, worrying about silly things, stressing over silly things, spinning your wheels on low value, low energy giving tasks, doing all of these things that are actually disregarding the value of that most precious asset. And that really should be a call to action. It should be a recognition that the day that you start treating time as your most precious asset is the day that you completely change your life. Because when you start leaning into time and when you start recognizing that you can actually create more of it, recognizing that you can get more out of it by deploying it into things that are actually creating energy in your life, where you're going to have those extraordinary outcomes, where you're going to have the 10, 100,000x outcomes, that your entire life will change on the back of that one tiny piece of awareness.
I love it. I love it. And I loved your commentary about compounding. I think it got me thinking about my own, obviously, the phrase compounding. You're a finance guy originally. You're an entrepreneur, you're an investor. This compounding concept is usually spoken of in the realm of money, and it makes sense. And anybody who's ever had experienced any form of compounding, interest in your savings account, buying stocks, seeing them go up, having a great year last year somehow on the S&P 500, thanks to like two stocks. The power of compounding is really, back to Warren Buffett, that whole game. What though, outside of money, can we do with this concept of compounding as it relates back to our lives and back to the precious time that we have?
I view this as perhaps one of the most important mindset shifts you can have as a human being to enable you to live the life that you want, which is to say that you need to recognize that every area of your life has a form of compounding, positive or negative. And by the way,
Mm,
compounding is something that people only think about to the upside. We actually almost exclusively think about positive compounding, where we say, like, okay,
yeah.
you see the chart. Oh, if I get 1% better every single day, I'm going to be a 37x by the end of the year. You don't think about the negative side of that, where if you're getting 1% worse, you basically get zeroed out after a year. And that is just as important as the positive side of it for all of these areas of your life. And so when I say the important mindset shift, what I mean is, the financial one, that if I invest $100 today, that's going to compound and stack so that it's worth a whole lot more in the future. I know that. I know that $100 today is better than $0 today. I know that $10 today is better than zero. Every single other area of your life, the exact same rule applies. An
Wow.
investment in your relationships today compounds into the future. Taking that 10 minutes to spend present time with your child today. It doesn't have to be the like fancy, elaborate moment. As you said, it's about the little thing. It's about the little bit of time. It's about time. That compounds in your relationship into the future. Your investment in your health today, mental or physical, compounds into the future. And similarly, if you fail to make that investment, it will atrophy. It will have negative compounding. We sort of know that when it comes to our health because you see it, right? Like you see,
Yeah.
I went to my 10-year college reunion recently, and I recognized this fact that everyone was 32 years old, but some people looked 50 and some people looked 25. And it was a reflection of the fact that after 10 years, your daily habits literally show up on your face. That is
Mm.
either positive or negative compounding in the face of the natural decay of your life and your aging that will happen. All of these areas, we need to recognize the power of compounding. And what it does when you have that mindset shift is you recognize that I'm going to make daily tiny investments in these things. I'm going to do my dollar cost averaging into my relationships just as much as I am into the S&P 500.
Mm. Or, as you kind of alluded to, maybe stopping uh, some things, maybe breaking some bad habits, because those are compounding your soul or your uh, being or your essence, or, by the way, the wrinkles in your face, the wrong direction. So that's a really powerful concept. I've never really heard anyone go that direction with it. I appreciate that. That's awesome. I love this concept of, and that's why I say it to myself every day. It's about time. It's not about. I mean, obviously, right? There are a gazillion things we can do differently, better, faster, greater. But especially as it relates to the things that matter most to us, like our relationships, forget trying to be grandiose, forget trying to be well planned. Just spend the time, and I remind myself some specifics. Like my kids come to me and say, "Dad, can we?" And the minute I hear that, I am programmed by my morning mantra to say yes. It's one of the things I say to myself. I say yes to my kids. Just practice saying yes, especially, to your children. Maybe not say no to drugs, I guess, but like practice saying yes to those that matter the most to you, and beyond relationships.
I love
You
that.
want to speak Mandarin Chinese, like I got the opportunity to in my life. I can tell you it's about time. Not some intense 2 weeks or even 6 weeks in China. Will hold a candle to a little bit every day for a year. And I get to see this in my own children, who also now get to be in this immersion program where they're learning Mandarin, and it's so satisfying. By the way, I got the chance to take them on a grandiose trip, not so grandiose, but a trip to China last year for their first time, which meant a lot to me because I've spent a lot of my life in Asia, and that was really cool. And we did some amazing things, but it still wasn't as satisfying as just seeing their ability, having compounded since the first grade, since kindergarten, to speak Mandarin,
Mm.
even with a, okay accent. Like, as a father, as a liver of life, It's just these examples of the compounding effects of just effort are so visceral to me.
And it's such an important lesson for your children to learn. And the thing that I often reflect on now, and probably the number one thing I've changed my mind on since I've become a parent, is before my son was born, I had like written out this long list of things that I wanted to teach him. And I was going to like sit
Mm.
down and talk to him and teach
Yeah.
him these things, right? And I have
Yeah.
just learned that you cannot teach your kids anything. You just have to embody the things that you want them to learn. And if you embody
Mm.
them, they're going to learn by absorbing those things. And I just think that at the end of the day, compounding and the benefits of delayed gratification in life is probably the single most important trait that I could imagine teaching them or embodying for them to learn from. Because
Mm.
that is the key to life. Delayed gratification is the key to life because every single thing that you want in life is on the other side of something you don't want to do. It's on the other side of something challenging. The meaningful relationship you want is on the other side of 100 hard conversations, of struggling through the mud, of fighting through things. The healthy body that you want is on the other side of 100 workouts or 100 bland meals. The business that you want is on the other side of hundreds of hours of focused work and challenging decisions. Every single thing is the result of delayed gratification. It's the willingness to do the hard thing now that is going to create the benefit later. And so, the more that we can embody that with our children, the more we can show that through our actions, the more I think they will benefit from understanding that as they get older.
Yeah. I think it's, antithetical to what I just said. I try to say yes to my children in terms of just spending time. They want to shoot hoops. They want to drive around in circles in the backyard. Yes. They want to spend their money on something stupid or spend my money on something stupid. There's a no from me as much as I can possibly resist it. So it's not, I guess it's an interesting reflection. It's not just about saying yes to everything, but specifically, I think as it relates to spending time and not just my kids. I think like, I've reflected lately because Lovesack's gotten bigger and we have people now in disparate locations. And I really have to push myself to spend more time in my showrooms, spend more time with people face to face, because I can get used to
Mhm.
the efficiency of video. But if I let too many months slip by without face to face contact, so back to time, back to, you know, making the decision to spend time. That's why this dumb phrase, "It's about time," means so much to me, but I have to be very vigilant because I always forget. I always get lazy. I always slip up.
And how old are your kids?
Yeah. So I have 16, 14, 12, and 10-year-old,
Wow.
four of them.
Yeah. So you are also just very much in this period of deep understanding of just how short your time with your children really is.
Totally.
And I reflect on that a lot in the book. I mean, there are these charts which, when you get it, you'll see in the time wealth section where I lay out the amount of time that you spend with different people in your life, with your family, with friends, with yourself, with your partner, with your coworkers. And there's this one chart. I don't know if we're going to be able to pick
Hmm.
this up on the video here, so we'll have to put it in the show notes. But there's one of your children, and that chart is one of the most terrifying charts for any parent out there, because what it shows
Mm,
is that you basically have this short window of time during
yeah.
which you are like truly in your children's life before they have their own full, exciting, beautiful lives of their own. And that window, time, is not created equal. And it's what you
Yeah.
are living, and it's why that rule and that mantra is so important, because uh, and there's this interesting thing. The ancient Greeks had two words for time. They had chronos, which was the idea of chronological, literal time, kind of point to point, quantitative idea of time. And then they had kairos, which was the idea that not all time is created equal. That there are
Mm,
moments or windows that have more texture, they have more meaning, they're more important. And that is sort of the exact idea of that chart. You are in one of those kairos windows of your life with
yeah.
your children. This window where they are there, where you are present with them. And your time and your energy and your attention put into that window is so much more valuable, because it's going to create this lasting relationship with them. You think about, like, my number one definition of success as a human being is having adult children who still want to hang out with me. Because it implies a certain thing about what you were as a parent to them during that window of time. And
Yeah.
that's like that is what you are living out in the way that you're
I,
interacting, which is very cool.
I don't know. I hope so. We'll see. I mean, the truth is it's possible. I think we all probably have witnessed families or people where what you just described is true. And we've witnessed the opposite. We may be living one or the other ourselves as children of someone, right? Someone birthed you. But it's a great metric. I appreciate that perspective. I also think that I know for me, if I'm being honest, like I, it is so easy for me in the moment to find ways to circumvent or short circuit my, call it duty or my opportunity, I should say, to spend that time with my family because I'm a CEO of a public company. There's lots of things I got to do. There's travel involved. And when I'm home, sometimes it's thick and sometimes it's not. Sometimes I'm just tired. What parent hasn't felt that? And sometimes I'm just burnt out. It just, it's like I'd rather, I don't know, turn on a show or do something or read a book to unwind, relax on my own, and maybe skimp out on some of that precious time with my kids. So beyond kids, let's talk about time well spent. You're also a CEO. You're an investor. Gal, like how do you find ways to juggle these competing priorities? And are there any tactics or principles that you follow to ensure that you're allocating time on what matters to you?
I have a model that I've used to manage my time for several years now.
Hmm.
That I share in the book for the first time, which I call the four types of professional time. And it's the way that I time block my entire calendar and manage my life.
Cool.
And basically, what I say is that there are four types of professional time: there is management, there is creation, there is consumption, and there is ideation. And the way that I actually break up my life around those four things is how I think about managing and making progress in all of the different things that I'm working on. So, management time is basically meetings, processing email, responding to things, invoices, like the basic management tasks that are involved in your work or in running a company or in being an employee, and whatever work you have. That, generally speaking, ends up being like 80% of most people's professional time. You get bogged down in just days and days of management time, and it ends up taking up the biggest chunk. The second one is creation time. That is when you're actually creating something, whether it's writing, whether it's presentations, whether it's coding, whether it's, building something, actually working on creating something new. Generally speaking, for most people, management time and creation time end up equaling effectively 100% of their pie. They get 80, 90% of their time as management, and they get a tiny little sliver for creation. The third and fourth types of time, which I'll talk about, are sort of the forgotten types of professional time, and they are so important for actually driving asymmetric outcomes in your life. The third type is consumption. This is the idea of actually consuming new information at the top of the funnel so that you can have better ideas downstream. So
Yeah.
I've heard it phrased as anything you create is downstream from something you consume. The
Hmm.
quality of the things that you consume, your information diet, is going to affect the quality of the things you can produce. I try to actually have windows of time that are dedicated to quality consumption. Reading, listening to things, having conversations with people that are sort of learning conversations, all of those are consumption. They are creating those net new ideas at the top. And then the fourth piece is ideation, actually creating the space in your life to think in your professional context is almost unheard of in this day and age.
Hmm.
How many times have you actually had a block of time on your calendar when you actually got to sit and think about some of the bigger picture questions in your professional career,
Yeah.
in your business, in your 9 to 5 job, whatever it might be? So for most people, I think the call to action around this is take a look at your calendar with those four blocks of time in mind and color code it during the course of a week according to which of those your activities fall into, and get a clear baseline sense for what your current picture looks like. And then on the back of that, see if you can figure out a way to create more time for ideation, for consumption, and shrink down some of your management time to have more creation time as well. If you can get to that more balanced mix, you'll experience a whole lot of benefits.
I like this. More time for consumption.
I mean, more time for quality consumption for sure. Yeah,
I'm just
yeah,
teasing. You
yeah.
don't often hear that. No, but I love it. I think it's a fantastic framework. I'm guessing you're much more of a planner than I am in general. In fact, I'm going to come back to that 1 second because I'm curious about something. But let me tag on to something you said first. For me, just to again give other more ideas to our listeners, practical things that I don't think I've really ever shared. One of the reasons I love driving, like I hate flying, to be honest. Like I can't stand it. I think I'm almost 2 million on Delta. I've got another million on United. Like I've flown since I was, in my teens building this dumb company. So I'm just like done with it, but I love driving because I have this false sense of multitasking, right? Like I need to go from here to there. I'm doing that. And so now I kind of feel like time to just think or consume, I might take in a great podcast or a great book, audiobook, whatever, is so much less distracting to me because sometimes it's hard for me to do some of those things because I feel like I should be doing something else more productive. Right. And so driving is one hack for me. So I used to actually take drives that I didn't even need to take just to kind of do that kind of thinking and sometimes consuming or look for excuses to do that. And secondly, just to build on that, the other place is I can think of a few times in my life that some of the most pivotal pivots in Lovesac's history have come from me having some extra day on a trip I couldn't control, like let's say in Asia, where the factories are off on some holiday and like whatever. I just have this extra day that I can't fill. And instead of just going to be a tourist, which is also cool, I guess, I have spent sometimes a whole day starfished on like a king size bed, meditating, you could call it, imagining, thinking, and it has changed the direction of my whole company in a few different instances because I had some big problem to work out. And that for me, I'm a very visual person and I can almost like go through rounds and rounds and rounds of testing, whether it be a product solution, whether it be a retail concept solution, whether it be a branding solution, building it up, tearing it down, testing it, imagining it. And it's like I could do it in the real world or I could do it in a very concentrated way. And I found it to be really effective. And I know it's a really strange way to spend one's time, but man, like some of our biggest moves have come from those weird experiences.
Bill Gates had, his own version of that starfish on a king size bed. In the 1980s, he started doing. He called it a think week, where he would go off the grid for an entire week. He'd like go rent this cabin out in the woods, sort of, Walden esque, and he would just bring a bunch of reading and paper. No connectivity, no connection to the outside world, and he would just go read and think and learn. And he
Wow.
credited it in hindsight with a lot of the most transformative innovation that Microsoft had over its years and its journey. I
Interesting.
sort of adapted my own version of that. In I didn't feel like I have a week to do that, but I try to once a month carve out a day or at a minimum like 2 hours to kind of get out of my normal headspace, go to a coffee shop, go to an outdoor place, go rent a place, and just spend a few hours thinking and journaling usually on some bigger picture zoomed out questions around the things that I'm working on. And I kind of have like a series of question prompts that I love to ask myself to sort of guide that so that it's not totally aimless, but it ends up leading to some of the most transformative changes that you make in your life.
Yeah, totally. I love that you shared that. Both great examples. And, that's really kind of the spirit of this podcast. Let me save you 25 years is there really are tactics like that you can learn from, and pick your poison. Like so let me pivot this to vacation for a second. Cause I'm kind of curious about this. listening to you talk about your life and time blocking and how you approach things, which is it's fantastic. It's a great example, and we can learn so much. What kind of vacationer are you? Like, if you got the chance to go to Cancun or Hawaii with with your wife, maybe with your family, take your pick. Are you a planner or are you? I just I'm curious.
I am
What?
and my wife is the same, which helps. I am a book a really nice place and never leave the place. Like I will go to a location and not ever see the town or any of the like sites or museums or anything, and it drives my mom nuts. Like when I was a kid, I used to get to travel with my family because my dad's a professor and he would do research at different places, different universities around the world, and I would
Yeah,
occasionally get to travel, and so I got to go to all these places, and I would just want to go to the pool at the hotel. Over and over again. Like I would say, I just want to go back to our hotel. And it's funny because like I am still that same way, like that 3-year-old version
that's
of me.
funny.
I just love when I get a break and I get to disconnect. I just want to do nothing. And
That's
so
funny.
I am not. It's funny, like you kind of juxtapose the time blocker, routine oriented, somewhat OCD version of me that is my daily routine when I'm at home with the like
Yeah.
I need to completely turn that off when I get outside of that into my vacation mode.
No, that's why I asked. I think it's a great juxtaposition, and I think it's good for people to hear because I'm actually the same way. And I can do an adventure trip where, we're going to pack in a lot of things like the trip I took my kids on to Asia, but that's a very different kind of trip. And I rarely do that. And I'm much more, I'm completely open-ended on a vacation that's meant to be
Mm.
a vacation because I find that relaxing. And by the way, there are friends that we have that would not abide that. There's no way they're going to Cancun and not seeing the pyramids and doing this and that. And look, I respect it. Like as a world traveler myself, like I'm not a, I'm not advocating, turning a blind eye to culture and getting to know, the world as it lies. But if the purpose of a vacation is, if the purpose of a specific vacation is to relax, that's where I find it most relaxing. And by the way, that it can be super not relaxing to a different type of personality who can't sit still, which is often my case in real life. But anyway, so I just think it's, I love sharing these things and just hearing from you, your natural response, because I think some people need permission to behave in certain ways and understand that, by the way, there's no right way. Like I totally respect my friends who want to book the excursions and go do four-wheeler or whatever they want to do. But if I'm being honest, I'm actually aligned with you.
Yeah, I feel like this is a meta point for life, which is uh, do what works for you.
Yeah.
There's so much now in the world of content, in the world of social media, that's like I'm gonna shove an answer down your throat, and like here's the
Yeah.
only way that you can eat if you want to be fit and jacked, or like here's the only way that you can make money is by doing this thing, or whatever here's the only way to build relationships. The reality is you need to figure out what works for you. What do you enjoy? What
Yeah.
brings you joy? What gives you energy? And if what gives you energy is going and spending all day trucking around the pyramids in outside Cancun and like being miserable in that way. Sorry, I infused my own bias into that. Going and doing that all day, by all means, do that. I'm gonna go ahead and sit at the little pool and probably drink a few too many Coronas and eat some fish tacos and I'll be just fine.
Yeah, and give yourself permission. Give yourself permission and be honest with yourself. Uh, I think that a lot of ambitious people think that you're always ambitious, and but I think anyway. I think it's important for people to just hear different ways and to ultimately try to find choices that are truly aligned with how you feel versus what you think you're supposed to feel like, what you think others expect of you, whatever that is. And so,
You're preaching to
all
the
right.
choir, man. I mean, the give yourself permission, the way you phrase that, I absolutely love. I mean, there's there's a lot of self-awareness that comes with that, of actually knowing what it is that you enjoy and being able to separate that from what you think you're supposed to enjoy based on all of the indoctrination that's happened your entire life.
Totally.
And there's a maturity that is required to get to that point. But that's what my entire journey is about. It's like, teaching people to define what actually matters to them and then go and build their life around those things.
Absolutely. I mean, I probably say it on every podcast, but for me, self-awareness is at the root of success. It is the fundamental starting place. And because without it, we're just doing a lot of things for reasons that we're often not even aware of. And look, back to time, I've found that age really helps. Like, even as much as I studied self-awareness, emotional intelligence at a very early age, I'm a reader of books. I was exposed to the concept, and I tried to pursue a self-aware attitude. I can tell you that it has taken me years to peel back the onion far enough to where I could even decipher between my actual motivations and those that were sort of imposed upon me. Let me give you an example just to make it real. That's kind of related to what we were just talking about. I gave you this rant on how I hate flying because it's like I just done with it. It's like, and then I'll have friends, of course, who've made money and whatnot. I have all these entrepreneur friends and billionaire friends. And they're like, oh, well, you just have to fly private. It's like, no, you don't understand. I promise you, if I owned the plane, I would not like it anymore. Like, yeah, it might be more convenient and whatever. Like, I just have no interest. And I, by the way, I'll still fly because I have to, and I will, and I'll go on vacation, whatever. But I'm just telling you, like, if I'm being honest, I don't want to be on any airplane. I don't care how lavish it is. I don't care who owns it. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm just done with it. And so, like, I just be honest. That's how I feel. And by the way, I didn't feel that way. I can't tell you how exciting my life was when I was booking some cheapo airline hot wire flight to go to North Carolina to find the fabric to build the first. That was an adventure. I felt like an adventurer. I rented a car and drove to DC just so I could see DC, and I still try to push myself out of my comfort zone, but I'm just saying, like, if I'm being honest, that's where I'm at today. And it's okay. Like, who cares? Right? Like, not everyone should want a private jet, but Instagram will tell you differently.
You are going to love this book, man. You and I have a lot in common about how we view the
I can't
world,
wait.
and and that important theme. Like, it doesn't. You get to decide what you want. You get to decide what your own true north looks like. My parents, a few years ago, when I was at a rather dark point in my life, gave me this little silver compass. And on the compass, there was this inscription, and it just said, "So you may always know where your true north lies." And the message was really important, which was focus on direction, not speed. It's much better to climb slowly up the right mountain than to climb fast up the wrong one. And
Yeah.
in life, we are constantly told that you have to go faster, faster, faster. And here's the mountain you got
Yeah.
to climb, and go, 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 go. You got to get Forbes 30 under 30. You got Forbes 40 under 40. Whatever the new thing is, you have to go chase all these things. And we very rarely take time to ask ourselves the question of whether that mountain we are told we're supposed to climb is actually one we want to be at the top of. And is it
Yeah.
one that we're actually going to enjoy climbing up? We don't take the time to think that. We just accept it. We walk into the default setting. We walk into the life by default, the path that everyone handed to us. And this entire mission that I'm on, my entire journey,
Mm.
my purpose in life is to make people ask the question of whether or not they actually want to climb that mountain, or if there's one that they are better off climbing and building a life around something completely different, carving their own path. I stepped off early on the path that everyone
Yeah.
told me I was supposed to want, the one that I was supposed to walk up,
Yeah.
because I saw what was happening to me along the way. I saw, using the
Mhm.
metaphor, that my toes were starting to freeze and I was getting frostbite, and that I might lose myself in the journey to getting to the top. And so I
And
stepped.
by the way, you were on the path,
Yeah.
right? Ivy League graduate, finance track. This is just like a path to money, path to ease in some way, hard work, whatever. But like, that's one of the quintessential paths of our modern day.
Yeah, I had that stuff. I was achieving all of the definitions of success that you're handed. I was making money. I had a house. I had a car. I was getting promoted. I had the titles, and I started to have this sensation that I was winning the game. Like, people from the outside looking in, you would have said I was winning the game. But I started to have this feeling that if that was what winning the game felt like, I had to be playing the wrong game, because
Mm,
so many other areas of my life were starting to suffer while I was on this narrow, myopic, focused chase for more money.
mm.
And no one else had told me that I should just focus on money. It was just something that I started to slowly focus more and more on as my life wore on. And, it was like the idea of the Pyrrhic victory. The idea of like a victory that comes at such a steep cost to the victor that it might as well have been a defeat. I was winning the
By the
battle.
way, let me interrupt. It's possible that it's true no one told you to focus on money, but meanwhile, there were 1,000 points of communication telling you to focus on money, whether you realized it or not, right? Like the world has a way of doing that to us
Yeah.
through an Instagram post, through someone else's example, just through trying to conform to your peers and whatnot.
Yeah, and look, I even trace this back to my childhood. Like, I grew up in a town. My dad's a professor, so we were.
Mm,
He was a professor at Harvard, so like we were upper middle class, middle upper middle
yeah.
class. But I lived in a town that was known for all of the fancy finance people live there, and so
Mm,
I was kind of like on the lower end on a relative basis in our town. And one of my best
yeah.
friends was very rich, extraordinarily rich, private jet rich,
Yeah.
and I would hang out with him, and then I'd leave to go back to my house for dinner. And he was rich, and I envied him. I was like, man, he has all the nicest stuff. He has his room is filled with all the toys, all this stuff. And I never
Mm,
questioned the fact that I would leave. He would have a chef prepared dinner in front of the TV by himself. And I would go home and have dinner with my parents and sister sitting around the table that my mom
mm.
had prepared for us. And I never really questioned the fact that he was rich and I was not. Like, it was not a question in my mind of like, oh, is that actually what I want if that's what rich
Yeah.
looks like?
By the way, he probably envied you in some way that you weren't even aware of.
It's one of those funny things that it takes a long time to figure out, right? Um, I just it is that slow indoctrination into a culture that values a certain set of things. And what I talk about in the book is like the scoreboard is broken, or at least incomplete, because the scoreboard, the way that we measure our lives, is on the basis of money, because it is the
Mm,
measurable thing. It's so easy to take a single number and apply it as the value of who we are as humans. And unfortunately, money alone does not create a happy, fulfilling, comprehensively wealthy life. There are all of these other
yeah.
things that contribute to that. And it's things we know. We know that relationships are critical. We know that purpose, meaning, that growth is critical. We know that our physical health is critical. We know that freedom, time is critical. And yet, we don't have a way of thinking about those, measuring them. And so when we can't measure something, we don't really take the right actions around it because we aren't able to track it. We aren't able to measure it. We're analytical creatures. And so that is really what all of this is about. It's create the right scoreboard and everything starts to work in your favor because you start to take the right actions, create the right outcomes.
I love it. I mean, spot on. I I want to shift gears and talk about hobbies for a second. So, beyond we talked about vacations, we've talked a lot about work and we've talked about our families. What role does taking, you know, time for hobbies, like interests that may not, just be consuming more useful information. We talked a little bit about that. Play in your life.
I think it's incredibly important to have something in your life that you suck at but love doing. Uh,
Yeah,
Especially for people who are like go-getters, growth-oriented, highly ambitious.
interesting.
To just have something that is just yours. It's not a side hustle. It's not a hack. It's not a monetization scheme. It's just
Yeah.
your thing.
Uh,
And that has taken me a long time to come to terms with. As
I think that's a brilliant insight. And if I'm being honest, now that I'm reflecting on it through that lens, I'd never thought about it that way. I somehow naturally pursued some things in sequence over the many years that I suck at, that I love doing one after another. And instead of, and it always bugged me that I wasn't like really good at anything. I'm kind of good at a lot of
Mm.
things, but I never thought of it in those terms. That's really interesting.
Yeah, I think it's a useful heuristic. I mean, we know scientifically that the second that we start turning these passions or hobbies into like work, we lose an intrinsic interest in them. The Stanford marker experiment is the most famous example of this. They, went to a bunch of kids that love drawing, and they took half of them and they paid them for these drawings, and then the other half they just let draw. And they came back 2 weeks later, and the kids that they had paid for drawing didn't enjoy drawing as much as the ones who they
Yeah.
hadn't. And it was an example of the fact that, the second that you turn a passion into a job or into a side hustle, it may no longer be a passion. You just turn it into
Yeah.
more work. And so it's really important that we have those things that are just kind of curiosity inducing, that are just life giving. I interviewed this 90-year-old woman in the book, and she talked to me about the fact that she just taken up painting. She was taking 2 painting classes, and she called them life giving for her. I thought that was such an interesting articulation of something that has no potential utility. It's not going to make her money. She's not going to be an artist. She's not going to sell paintings. But it's life giving for her. The community, the experience, the art, the creative outlet. And that is the case for these hobbies, for these things. They are life
That's the
giving.
game. That's the game. Because by the way, even the most famous artists you can think of are gone.
Mm,
And whether this woman's art that you just described was good or marketable or saleable or any of it, it doesn't matter to her
mm.
either. Like at some point she'll be gone too. And so I love that because there's another opportunity to give yourself permission. I suck at surfing, but I love
There you go.
surfing. And by the way, I got good enough. I can ride some waves. I suck at dirt biking compared to my friends, but I'm good enough. I can complete a Baja 1000 with them. It makes it fun, but I'll barely complete it, in time. Like, but it's made it fun. And I feel like I've just pursued these things. I can play music. I played on stages. But I'll never be a recording artist. But all these things have given me so much life and have kept me sharp and have really, forced me to get out of my head. Because as someone who's kind of intense, each one of these things that I mentioned, I've found requires focus, like, or you're going to drown, or you're going to kill yourself on a dirt bike, or you're going to, embarrass yourself. And so I love the focus of it because otherwise my brain is never present because I'm too easily distracted. That's another thing we could jam on, the present. Lately I've been really fascinated from some of these podcast conversations about trying to be more present myself and being in time,
Mm.
because it's very easy for my mind to be working on other things. And that's really, I've discovered, while it can be a strength if I'm trying to solve a problem, it is a huge debility if I'm trying to savor my time on this earth. Do you have any opinions on that?
It is becoming increasingly difficult in the modern era to be present. And there's interesting science and research that's developing around this related to technology. There's scientific evidence that if I even have my phone out while we are having a conversation, that we end the conversation with less feelings of connection. That
Mm,
the person you are talking to actually feels less connected to you, even if your phone is just sitting on the table during that conversation.
interesting.
It creates this separation between the two of you. And so, in a world where we're constantly connected, it does become very difficult to be present or to create the perception of presence, which is sometimes just as important. Because again, like, if that's an interaction with your child and they are perceiving you as not being present because you have your phone out in front of them, that impacts things. When you talk about compounding, that compounds in
Mm,
that relationship negatively over a long period of time.
yeah, it's a great one. And it reminds me of other little pieces of my morning mantra, things I try to remind myself of every day, to look at my children in the eye, to look at others in the eye, these are all things I can, and by the way, I've been saying these things for years and years and years, but I still struggle. Thankfully, though, I think I would be completely useless if I didn't have the compounding effect of repeating some of these just life hacks and habits that I picked up along the way and layered them into my little, it's a weird thing I do, but I found it to be very effective. And I only share it because maybe it can be useful to someone else out there.
I love that.
So, look, we could go on forever, but you've written this book, The 5 Types of Wealth. I think you threw them out already in natural course of conversation, but I'd be remiss not to ask you. So what are these 5 types of wealth, and any way to tie a bow on this conversation through that lens?
Yeah. So the 5 types of wealth that I cover in the book: time wealth, all about the freedom to choose how you spend your time, who you spend it with, where you spend it, when you trade it for other things. It's about that awareness that we talked about, an awareness of the precious nature of your time. Social wealth, all about your relationships, people, the depth and the breadth of connection to those around you. Mental wealth is about your purpose. It's about your meaning. It's about growth. It's about your ability to create space to actually wrestle with those unanswerable big picture questions in your life. Physical wealth, it's about your health and vitality, your ability to take control of the controllables and fight that natural decay, that natural atrophy in your life. And then it's about financial wealth, the last type, and a very important type. Money isn't nothing. It simply can't be the only thing. And in the context of financial wealth in particular, a focus on understanding your definition of what enough looks like, what your enough life looks like, with the recognition that your expectations are your single greatest financial liability. Because if they grow faster than your assets, you will never feel wealthy. You will just be chasing whatever more the world is telling you should want. And in terms of tying a bow around all of this, we've been talking about this the entire time, but I think the meta point of this entire conversation is exactly the meta point of this book, which is, it is not about giving you the answers for your life. It is about helping you ask the right questions. Sit with the questions, because then with those questions, you can clearly define what actually matters to you, what you truly care about. Not what the world tells you should care about, not what your family tells you should care about, not what your friends tell you, not what society tells you, but what you truly care about. And once you know that, you can take the right actions to go and build your life around those things. That's what the book's all about. And it sounds like that's what you are all about. And so I know we're going to be friends for a long time on the back of this.
I hope so. Any power love sack user is a friend of mine. But this has been fantastic, Sahil. Follow Sahil on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter. He's massive. Sahil Bloom, and an exciting entrepreneur, Sultan of Stanford, master of money, insightful investor, inspirational influencer. He's now adding to his already impressive resume with this book, The 5 Types of Wealth, releasing like tomorrow, releasing like in a couple weeks. I'm so excited for you. And remember, if you're listening out there, it's just about time. That just might save you a chunk of your own 25-year journey. Thank you, Sahil, for breaking it down today.
Thanks for having me.
Once a year to take my friends away should not be the budget for your bike across America.
TikTok has become an aggregator for some of the dumbest human actions.
When I won that million, I was $2 million in debt, barely hanging on.